Uncovering the Truth, the Kendrick Johnson Story. A group of students crowded around the old rolled-up gym mats inside Lowndes High School in Valdosta, Georgia. The smell of rubber filled the air, and someone shouted, "There's something in there!" Moments later, the gym went silent. A few brave ones peered inside the mat, and what they saw made them scream. Inside the vertical wrestling mat was the body of a teenage boy, upside down, his face swollen, his skin pale, and blood dripping from his nose. It was 17-year-old Kendrick Johnson. The sight shocked everyone. His shoes neatly placed beside him, and his body looked like it had been there for days. But how could this happen inside a school gym? Who would do this? Or was it an accident? The questions echoed louder than the screams. Students ran out crying. Teachers rushed in. Within minutes, police tape surrounded the area. Officers moved around quickly, their radios buzzing with words like body, teen, and unresponsive. But the strangest part was how calm some of them looked, almost like they already knew what they were going to say. Before long, the rumors started spreading. Kendrick must have fallen into the mat trying to grab his shoe. But those who saw his body couldn't believe it. Something didn't feel right. Kendrick Johnson had been missing for over 24 hours. His parents, Kenneth and Jacqueline Johnson, had been calling friends, checking with neighbors, even going to the school the night before. But every time they asked for help, someone told them, "He's probably out with friends." Kendrick wasn't the kind of boy to run off. He was quiet, funny, athletic, and dreamed of playing football in college. Everyone who knew him said the same thing. Kendrick loved life too much to just disappear. Now, as the sheriff's department carried his body away from the gym, his parents' world began to crumble. Jacques. Lynn screamed when she got the news, and Kenneth nearly collapsed in the school parking lot. "My baby was found dead in the school, and you're telling me it was an accident?" he shouted at an officer. But the answers they got were confusing and cold. The sheriff's office quickly called it a freak accident. They said Kendrick had fallen into the mat while reaching for his sneakers, gotten stuck, and suffocated. But that explanation didn't make sense. The mat was over 6 feet tall, and Kendrick was more than 5 feet 10. His shoulders were wider than the mat's opening, and if it really was an accident, why was his face swollen? Why was there blood on his body, but none on the inside of the mat? Why were his organs missing when his body was later returned to his family after the first autopsy? As word spread through Valdosta, people started talking and questioning. Students whispered in hallways. Parents demanded answers at meetings. Reporters began calling. And then, when the family received the autopsy photos, what they saw broke their hearts even more. Kendrick's face was unrecognizable, beaten, bruised, and bloated. Something terrible had happened in that gym. But someone didn't want the truth to come out. Late one night, Kendrick's parents sat at their kitchen table, staring at a photo of their son in his football uniform. Jacqueline whispered, "They think we'll just let this go. But we won't." Kenneth nodded slowly, clenching his fists. "If they won't tell the truth," he said, "we'll find it ourselves." And that's when it all began, the long, painful fight for justice. The Johnsons hired private investigators, reviewed camera footage, and spoke to anyone who knew their son. But the deeper they dug, the more strange things they found. The school's security cameras had mysterious gaps, missing footage right around the time Kendrick was last seen. The tie-in me stamps didn't match up. Some students who had been near the gym that day refused to talk. Others said they were told not to speak about it at all. And just when the Johnsons thought they were getting closer to the truth, something shocking happened. A discovery that made everything even more suspicious and even more dangerous. That was when the Johnson family realized this wasn't just about their son anymore. It was about something much bigger. The morning after the shocking discovery, the Johnson family sat in silence, surrounded by stacks of papers, police reports, and printed photos. The sound of Jacqueline's tears filled the small living room. "They said it was an accident," she whispered, staring blankly at the report. "But look at his face. Look at my baby." Kenneth clenched his jaw, fighting back anger. "No accident does that to a boy," he muttered. "No accident steals organs." Word of Kendrick's death spread fast across Valdosta. News trucks began parking outside the school, and reporters shouted questions at the sheriff, who calmly repeated the same line. This was a tragic accident. No foul play suspected. But behind the scenes, people were starting to talk. Some teachers claimed the school was hiding something. A few students whispered that there had been fights, and even threats, before Kendrick disappeared. One name kept coming up, but no one dared say it too loud. The Johnsons decided to see the gym for themselves. They stood inside the large, echoing space, the same place where Kendrick's body had been found. The mats had been removed, the floor scrubbed clean, but the silence was heavy. Jacqueline looked around slowly, tears falling down her cheeks. "He used to play basketball right there," she said softly, pointing to the far corner. "Now they expect us to believe he died reaching for his shoe." Kenneth walked to where the mats once stood. "If he dropped his shoe inside," he said, "why didn't he just tip the mat over? Why crawl inside head first?" He pushed against the wall, thinking. And he looked down and noticed something odd, a small dark stain on the floor. "They missed a spot," he said. The janitor passing by stopped suddenly, his eyes wide. "You folks shouldn't be in here," he said quickly, before walking off. That moment stuck with Kenneth. The more he thought about it, the more things didn't add up. So, he called a private pathologist, Dr. William Anderson, to conduct a second autopsy. When the results came back, they were horrifying. Kendrick's organs were missing. In their place were crumpled newspapers. The Johnsons were furious. "Who takes a child's organs?" Jacqueline cried. "And why?" The local authorities brushed it off, saying the organs had been misplaced or destroyed during the first autopsy. But no parent could accept that. To them, it felt like someone was trying to erase the evidence. Soon, protesters began gathering outside the courthouse, holding signs that read, "Justice for KJ." The case started gaining national attention. News outlets picked up the story, and celebrities began tweeting about it. But even with all the attention, the answers didn't come. Instead, the family started receiving threats. Mysterious cars parked outside their home at night. Strange phone calls came in, then hung up without a word. It was as if someone was watching them. Meanwhile, the school released the surveillance video. But it didn't help. It made things even more confusing. The footage showed Kendrick walking into the gym, wearing black and white sneakers, then disappearing behind the bleachers. After that, nothing. The next clip jumped ahead several minutes, and he was gone. No one saw him leave, and no one saw anyone follow him. Kenneth replayed the video over and over, his eyes burning from lack of sleep. "It doesn't make sense," he told Jacqueline. "Where's the rest of it?" He took the video to an independent analyst who confirmed what the family suspected. Sections of the footage were missing. "Someone edited this," the analyst said firmly. "The time codes don't line up. There's at least an hour of missing footage." That revelation hit like a thunderbolt. If someone had tampered with the evidence, that meant Kendrick's death wasn't an accident. It was being covered up. That night, Kenneth couldn't sleep. He sat in the living room, staring at the candlelight flickering beside Kendrick's photo. Then, around midnight, a loud bang echoed outside. He jumped to his feet, grabbed a flashlight, and ran to the porch. A black SUV sped off down the street, its tires screeching. On the ground near the mailbox was a small, folded note. He picked it up with shaking hands. On the paper, written in red ink, were just 4 words. "Stop digging for truth." Kenneth froze. His heart pounded in his chest. Someone out there didn't just want them silent. They wanted them scared. He went back inside and locked every door. Jacqueline met his eyes, terrified. "What was that?" she asked. Kenneth didn't answer. He just looked at her and said, "It's starting." If you've been following the heartbreaking journey of the Johnson family and want to know how far they went to uncover the truth behind Kendrick's mysterious death, don't scroll away now. This is where the story reaches its most powerful and shocking moment. Stay with me till the end, because what happens next will leave you speechless. The morning after the threatening note, the Johnson home felt colder than ever. Kenneth barely slept, and Jacqueline sat by the window all night, clutching Kendrick's favorite hoodie. They both knew one thing: someone wanted to silence them. But instead of backing down, it made them even stronger. The next day, they drove straight to Atlanta to meet with civil rights leaders and lawyers. Photos of Kendrick, smiling in his football jersey, were spread across the conference table. The family shared everything: the missing organs, the edited surveillance tapes, the strange note, and the threats. After a long silence, one of the lawyers finally said, "This isn't just a case anymore. This is a fight for justice." Within weeks, protests spread beyond Valdosta. Crowds marched through downtown streets chanting, "Justice for KJ." TV cameras flashed, reporters swarmed, and people all over America began asking, what really happened to Kendrick Johnson? The pressure grew so strong that federal investigators reopened the case. For a moment, hope returned to the Johnson family. But as the investigation dragged on, the family noticed something troubling. Many of the same local officers who first ruled the case an accident were still involved. Evidence went missing, files were delayed, and key witnesses suddenly couldn't remember what happened that day. Despite it all, Jacqueline refused to give up. One afternoon, she stood outside the courthouse in the pouring rain, holding a large photo of her son. "My child deserves the truth," she said firmly to the cameras, "and I will not rest until he gets it." Her voice cracked, but her eyes never wavered. The clip went viral. Thousands of people from across the country sent messages, donations, and support. But just when things seemed to be turning in their favor, the Johnsons received shocking news. The federal case was being closed again. The official statement said there wasn't enough evidence of foul play. Jacqueline dropped the phone and screamed. Kenneth punched the table so hard his knuckles bled. After everything, the protests, the evidence, the autopsies, the missing organs, the system had failed them again. Days later, they visited Kendrick's grave. The wind rustled through the trees as Jacqueline knelt down, placing fresh white roses beside his tombstone. "They can close their files," she whispered, "but they can't close our hearts." Kenneth put a hand on her shoulder and said softly, "We'll keep fighting, baby. We'll keep fighting." Even after years of struggle, lawsuits, and investigations, no one has ever been held accountable for Kendrick Johnson's death. The official explanation remains accidental, but the Johnson family and thousands of supporters still believe the truth has been buried. Yet through all the pain, one thing remains clear. Kendrick's story woke America up. It forced people to ask hard questions about justice, race, and truth in a system that too often turns away. And though the case remains unresolved, the fight continues. Every protest, every candlelight vigil, and every whispered prayer keeps Kendrick's name alive. Because in Valdosta, Georgia, and across the nation, one message still echoes through the years: justice for KJ. If Kendrick's story moved you, don't just watch, share it. Every voice counts in keeping his memory alive. Hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next real-life story that demands justice. Together, we keep the truth alive.